The wedding should have been a joyous occasion, a celebration of love that knew no boundaries. But for James Carter, it was anything but that. The moment he announced his engagement to Aaliyah, a beautiful, intelligent, and compassionate black woman, the world around him turned hostile. His family, once warm and supportive, recoiled in disgust. His childhood friends, the ones he had grown up with, made cruel jokes behind his back. Even his colleagues at the prestigious law firm where he worked exchanged whispers, their smiles turning into forced pleasantries. "You Ray ruining your life," his mother had spat, her face twisted with disappointment. "Think about your future. Think about the kind of children you'll have. Do you really want them to suffer?" His father simply shook his head and muttered, "You'll regret this, son." But James didn't regret it, not for a second. Aaliyah was everything he had ever wanted in a partner. She was strong, kind-hearted, and fiercely intelligent. She had built her own successful career as an entrepreneur, defying the odds at every turn. But none of that seemed to matter to the people who looked at her and saw only her skin color. The humiliation was relentless. At their wedding, empty seats outnumbered the guests. Invitations were ignored, and those who did show up had little more than pity in their eyes. Even in public, strangers stared, some muttering insults under their breath. James and Aaliyah endured it all, and yet, through every cruel word and every hateful glance, they held their heads high. Then, 2 years later, everything changed, and the very people who had once ridiculed them would soon wish they had never doubted them at all. 2 years had passed since James and Aaliyah stood together at the altar, facing not only the vows they had promised each other, but also the world as relentless judgment. They had endured the whispers, the cold stares, and the family members who had cut them off. But instead of breaking under the weight of society as disdain, they thrived. James, once overlooked for promotions at his law firm after his marriage, decided he had had enough. He left and started his own legal practice, a firm dedicated to helping marginalized communities fight against injustice. At first, his old colleagues scoffed, convinced he would fail without their support. But they were wrong. Aaliyah, already a rising entrepreneur, expanded her business into a multi-million-dollar brand. She had started small, selling handmade organic skincare products, but through sheer determination and innovative marketing, her company took off. Within a year, she was featured in major business magazines, and soon after, major investors lined up to partner with her. The same people who once looked down on her, the same ones who dismissed her as not good enough, were now begging to be part of her success. One evening, James and Aaliyah arrived at a prestigious gala in downtown New York. The event was meant to honor influential business leaders and philanthropists, and to everyone's surprise, the couple was the center of attention. James' former boss, the very man who had once doubted him, approached with an awkward smile. "James, my boy, you've really built something incredible. Maybe we should talk about collaborating?" Aaliyah asked critics, who once laughed at her ambition, now sang her praises. "Aaliyah, darling, I've always believed in your talent," one of her distant relatives gushed, conveniently forgetting the years of cold silence. But James and Olia hadn't forgotten. They remembered the rejection, the sneers, the condescending remarks. And now, standing tall in a room full of people who had once doubted them, they exchanged a knowing glance. Success was the sweetest revenge, and as they left the event that night, hand in hand, James whispered to Olia, "They thought they could break us. But look at us now." She smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "This is just the beginning." The ones who had despised them now regretted everything. As James and Olia left the gala that night, they felt victorious, but they also knew their journey was far from over. Success had brought them recognition, but it had also attracted new challenges. The same people who once dismissed them now wanted a piece of their achievements. One morning, James received a phone call from his mother. It had been nearly 2 years since she had last spoken to him. When he saw her name on the screen, a mix of emotions swirled inside him. "James," she said softly, almost hesitantly, I saw you on the news. Your firm is doing amazing things." She paused, struggling to find the words. James let the silence stretch. He had once longed to hear pride in her voice, but now he wasn't sure what to feel. "I was wrong," she finally admitted. "I should have supported you. I should have welcomed Olia with open arms." James sighed. He had spent years craving his family's approval, but now that it was being offered, he wasn't sure if he could accept it so easily. "Mom, it's not just about you apologizing. It's about the way you made us feel, like our love was something to be ashamed of," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I know," she whispered. I want to make things right." James didn't respond immediately. Instead, he thought about Olia, about how she had faced the rejection with grace, about how they had built their life despite everything. "I need to talk to Olia about this," he finally said. "If we decide to move forward, it has to be on our terms." His mother agreed, and after hanging up, James found Olia in their sunlit kitchen, sipping tea and reading an email from one of her business partners. He sat beside her, taking her hand. "My mom called," he said. Olia raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, she saw us on TV, and now she wants to reconnect." James nodded. Olia sighed, setting her mug down. "James, I don't hold grudges, but I also don't forget. If we let her back into our lives, I need to know she has truly changed, not just because we're successful now, but because she sees me as worthy, as equal." James squeezed her hand. "I know, that's why we take our time with this." Olia nodded, appreciating how he always stood by her side. In the weeks that followed, James' mother made efforts to repair the damage. She visited them, apologized in person, and for the first time, truly listened to Olia's story. She heard about the pain, the rejection, the quiet resilience it took to keep going. Slowly, trust began to rebuild, but Olia remained cautious, letting time prove sincerity. Meanwhile, James' law firm and Olia's business continued to soar. They became a power couple, inspiring young entrepreneurs and breaking barriers in their respective industries. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their penthouse overlooking the city, James wrapped an arm around Olia. "We made it," he said. Smiling, she leaned into him, and the best part, we did it together. From being despised and humiliated to earning the world's admiration, their love had not only survived but thrived, and the ones who had doubted them, they could only watch in regret.